Hey y'all, I am gonna start some sprouts today, so I thought I would show you how I do that. Alright, so this is my sprouting jar. This is a half-gallon size jar, which is quite large. Most families or people starting out doing sprouts are not gonna need this size jar. So you can just use a regular quart size mason jar and that will work good. There's a lot of different lids you can get for quart size jars when you're sprouting. You can order them online. You can get them at like a Whole Foods or an organic type store. A lot of health food stores carry them. They're basically just this. They just need to have a mesh screen. When I was being really cheap and didn't have money to spend $5 or $6 on a lid for a jar, I actually would just use some mesh. You could use cheesecloth. Cheesecloth wouldn't be very reusable, so you'd need to throw it away, but you can use anything that's like food grade-ish. I actually just would cut squares of like crinoline from my sewing, like the mesh stuff that you use to line dresses, and I would just use a rubber band and elastic it over the top, and it worked great. I always washed it with soap before I used it, but I have since been able to upgrade a little bit. These are a lot easier to work with. This one, the mesh it's built right in. I don't have to worry about this coming apart, just stays with the lid. I actually got this sprouting jar at a thrift store for I think $2 or $3. So if you keep your eyes open, and it even came with a full unopened bag of sprouting seeds in it. The seeds alone were worth more than that, never mind the jar. So that was a great deal, a good find. I often have 2 jars of seeds going if the weather is good. Here it's really humid in the summer and even some of the fall. And in the high humidity, I cannot sprout because they will mold no matter how many times I rinse them or don't rinse them. So right now we're going into winter and it's a little bit drier. So it's a good season for me to be growing sprouts, which helps to save a little bit of money on our greens and just helps to give us some extra nutrients that we need. This is a salad mix. It has alfalfa sprouts, radish sprouts, and broccoli sprouts. My favorite is alfalfa. I love alfalfa sprouts and they're a super mild flavor. But broccoli and radish are really high in nutrients, so I'll often buy mixes and just mix them in. You don't taste them a whole lot. My kids love sprouts. We just put them on anything. We'll add them to salads, put them on sandwiches, top stir fries with them. I try to keep them raw and cold and intact so that all the nutrients are still in them. That's how they're best for you. So some people probably use a real measure. I just grabbed one of my big spoons, and in this size jar, I'm gonna put approximately 4 tablespoons. In a quart size mason jar, you're gonna do 2, and that is all you need to basically get a full jar of sprouts. So you don't use a lot of seeds for a batch of sprouts. It's really very simple. So once I have those 4 spoonfuls in there, I am going to fill this up with Berkey water, and I'm going to let it soak for 5 to 6 hours. Not any longer than that for small seeds. If you are doing microgreens or like pea sprouts or lentil sprouts, they're big ones, they can soak a little bit longer, maybe 8 hours. But these ones, we just keep them right around the 5-hour mark if you can. So that is filled up with water. I'm going to just put on my cap just to keep bugs out. Right now that part doesn't matter too much. It's going to sit on the counter. Make sure all your seeds are floating in the water and hopefully not stuck to the sides of the jar. And we're just going to set that aside. We're going to let that soak. As for where you can get sprouting seeds, pretty much anywhere that you can get the lids for sprouting. You can order them online. You can get them at Whole Foods, natural grocers, depending on what grocery stores you have around you. A lot of health food stores are starting to carry them because they're becoming quite popular, but if you can't find them there, it's super easy to find them online. Some of the sprouts, like radish and broccoli, have a little bit more kick to them. They're a little bit kind of spicier. And then a lot of them, like the alfalfa and pea sprouts and things like that, they're very mild. So if you're looking for a milder flavor, maybe stick with alfalfa, clover, things like that. They're great to experiment with. You can get small packs, just enough to kind of sample a few tries of it, see what you like, and then buy bigger packs if you become a fan and start doing it a lot. All right, it's been about 7 hours, which is a little bit longer than you want it to be. 5 to 6 hours is ideal, but we were out this evening and so I didn't get to it. They've been soaking, as you can see. There's a little bit of color that comes off some of the seeds. That is normal and nothing to be concerned about. Certain seeds just let off a little bit of color when they're soaking. Some of them don't and some of them do, and because this is a mix, one of them does. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna take it over to the sink. We're gonna drain out all that water. That's why we have that nice mesh on top. Drain as much of that out as you can. I'm gonna come over to my filtered water. I'm gonna give all those seeds a good rinse. Shake them gently around. Drain that water back out. All right, and then after you drained out most of the water, what you're gonna do is just invert that jar upside down in something. You can get lids for sprouting. Will come with something that will hold them at an angle like that, or you can just use a bowl. Bread pan works great for this, especially if you're sprouting more than one at a time. Just as long as it's upside down so the water doesn't sit in there and then your seeds will mold or rot. So that's all we're gonna do for now. I'm going to rinse them twice a day, morning and night, for the next few days, and probably in about 3 or 4 days, I will show you the progress we have. All right, so it's been 2 days since I started my sprouts, and so I thought I would just give you a quick update and show you what they look like. They are just starting to grow little white sprouts on them. So definitely not ready to eat yet, but they're getting there. They're growing, doing what we want them to. So I'm just gonna give them their first rinse of the day and just show you how I do that. And then we'll come back in a couple days and see when they're ready to eat. So one thing I always do every time I rinse is I rinse out my bowl as well that I had the jar inverted over, because the water that leaks out, it'll get kind of stale. And because a lot of the seeds are sitting at the top near the lid, it'll make the seeds smell and not good anymore. So we rinse the bowl first. I don't wash or use soap, I just give it a rinse. Make sure you get all the ones that are along the edges of the jar and stuck to the lid everywhere. All right, a little rinse, a little spin, and then drain most of the water out into the sink. You don't have to stand here all day, but the more water you get in the sink means the less buildup in your container that you're inverting it over. Probably good. Stick it back in there. And right now the sun's coming in on this side, so I am going to move it currently to the shade. We don't really want them in too much sun until the last day or so. All right, so usually I grow my sprouts a little bit longer than this so that my jar is more full, but the humidity jumped up the last 2 days and I didn't want them to mold and lose all of them, so I just grabbed them and stuck them in the fridge. So now I'm going to rinse them and show you how I store them. I already ate some of them this morning because I couldn't wait, but they're fine. You don't have to rinse them at the end. All these brown bits are the seed husks that come off the seed. They kind of just get in your teeth, get over your hand, and you're putting them on sandwiches and stuff, and so it's a little easier if you rinse them or rinse most of them. So I'm just going to put them in a big bowl, larger than I'm going to store it in, and just kind of shake them out. I'm gonna leave most of what's in the jar unless I got some bigger chunks. That's mostly husk in there, so just kind of spread them out. And I'm gonna fill it up with some filtered water until the sprouts are fully covered. So probably more than half of the husks are going to fall to the bottom, but some of them instead like to float. So for the ones that float, I'm just gonna grab a little fine mesh strainer and I'm gonna just kind of push down on the sprouts and then scoop up the husks all the way around. Like I said, the husks aren't bad, they're not gonna hurt you. They're just kind of pesky. So I just kind of get the bulk of them off the top. That's as much as I'm going to do for on the top, and then because a lot of the rest are sunk to the bottom, all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pick them up by handfuls. I'm not going to dump it out because then it will mix all the husks back in. I'm just going to give each handful a good shake. Be careful not to grab too far down. Now I have a nice bowl of clean sprouts. All the husks fell to the bottom. If you're worried about that going down your drain, all you have to do is just use your same strainer that you were using on the top. Just pour your water right into that and it'll catch all those husks.